alternative talk radio. Get ready, America, for Deadline Live with your host, Jack Blood. Deadline Live is the daily wrap-up for those too busy in the daily grind to discern and dissect the news, while the so-called mainstream media buries the truth. Jack Blood uncovers it, exposing the lies that our trusted government officials do not want us to know. And now, please welcome Jack Blood.
We are locked and loaded for the Propaganda War second hour of Deadline Live. Coming your way, it is the 12th day of August, 2010. I'm Jack Blood, your narrator, your radio gun, reporting for the next hour. Many ways to listen to this show. Go to deadlinelive.info or rentsradio.com. As always, want to thank all of our great affiliates and all the great listeners that are getting out and spreading the word about this show. We are now in our 11th year and our 6th year of syndication. Joining us here in the second hour, somebody you should all know. I've been listening to him for years, from Art Bell to George Norrie and Coast to Coast. Seen him on Larry King Live a couple of times. It is Stanton Friedman. He is considered one of the world's top UFOlogists. I'm not even good at saying that, let alone understanding what they're talking about half the time. So I was really very surprised when the book that I got and the request that came with Stanton and his people was a book called Science Was Wrong. Startling truths about cures, theories, and inventions that is the impossibilists, declared impossible. And it really is a pretty good compendium of just how the people always thought, well, you can't fly, you certainly can't travel around the solar system, you can't cure this, you can't do that, and all of those things were done, I think largely, and I'm going to say this on my own part, largely thanks to the free market and privatization. These are the ways that people have been motivated to create these things, and these are the things that we surround ourselves with in our daily life. Some of them good, some of them bad. Technology, I guess, a double-edged sword. Stanton Friedman was employed for 14 years as a nuclear physicist by major industrial companies, working in highly advanced classified nuclear programs. Is the author of Flying Saucers in Science, co-authored Captured. He has appeared on hundreds of radio and TV programs, and now on this one, Science Was Wrong, the new book. Great book, Stanton. I've got it dog-eared all the way through.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. Well, it gets away, and there are 2 chapters on UFOs out of the 14. Mine and Kathleen Martin, my co-author, who did 7 of the 14 chapters, has one on the abduction conundrum. But when we started working on all aspects of UFOs, you keep running into these times, these events, these situations in which big shots with lots of degrees maybe and high position stood in the way of progress by making pronouncements from on high. Yeah. And it turns out that a lot of these could not be trusted, and how many are being made today that we should not trust?
Well, you do know, of course, that the Earth is flat and the entire universe revolves around the Earth, right?
Well, aren't they?
It's heresy to say anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I point out to people on the UFO scene that, let's face it, flying saucers finished the job that Copernicus started of taking man out of the center of the universe. 1543, he had gall enough to say that the Earth was not the center of the universe. The sun was, just a little step over. The book was banned for 300 years. And now we got to say, hey, you know what? We're not the big shots either. Big universe, old universe, we're not the most advanced. Some people have trouble with that, I'm afraid.
Stanton, I ask this question about everything, though, and I want to ask you this. Is it by design, or is it just incompetence? Are these people, these impossibilists who are always the naysayers out there denying science, are they doing that because they're gatekeepers and they're front people trying to keep information into just a few hands and not letting those innovations, those ideas get out to people as the Rothschild family was so afraid of, or is it something else?
Well, I'm not a conspiracy guy, frankly. I mean, I worked under security for 14 years, and I certainly didn't think I was part of a conspiracy because I didn't talk about outside work what I did in work. I think we're dealing with a combination of arrogance and ignorance. And I've named a new disease, the David Susskind syndrome. You remember David had a television program, smart guy. He brought me to New York to be on his show. He wanted me to send him all kinds of stuff, get him people like A Good Abductee. I got him Betty Hill, like a recent case, the coin helicopter case that happened, and he said, once a good skeptic, I said there aren't any, but here's how to reach full class, and so forth. Anyway, I go to New York, get him everything he wanted, and between segments of the broadcast, he says, look, I read the New York Times. There's nothing in there that says these things are real. So the syndrome goes like this. I'm a person who takes great pride in keeping up with what's important in the world. There is no question if aliens were visiting and the government were covering it up, that would be important. But if it were important, I would know about it, and I don't, so it must not be. Anybody who says it is must be some kind of a nut, and I'm not going to waste my time. Self-fulfilling prophecy on that. So it's the same with comments about, you know, you can't fly, space travel is utter bilge, said a great astronomer, the British astronomer royal. I mean, what higher authority can you get, you know? So I think it's more personal and not, you know, corporate, if you will, not a conspiracy, not speaking for the government.
Well, I mean, if it is, it's going to be very tightly held. You know, we've looked at, you know, the burning of the libraries of Alexandria, for instance, the containing of, you know, sacred geometry, these types of things that are only for the elite and those who have been initiated into some of the tightest circles. I mean, you can't deny that, certainly, Stanton, that has happened. Now, to what degree it's happened and why it's happened is probably going to be speculation unless you've got a whistleblower to tell you.
Well, let's face it, people in power want to stay in power, and I don't care what field you're talking about. So, yes, you're right. People want to protect the sacred truths that only they are part of the picture of. But I'm more concerned with people using their brains to avoid acceptance of statements made by people who are talking about something about which they know nothing despite all their degrees and their status. That's what's aggravating. And in the chapter on space in the new book, I point out that there was a guy named Dr. Campbell, an astronomer, in 1941. There was a lot of science fiction literature about going to the moon, and he was disgusted with that. So he set out, he wrote a paper to calculate the required initial launch weight of a rocket able to get a man to the moon and back. And that's a perfectly legitimate question. You know, how big will the darn thing have to be? So, pages of equations. He published it in a scientific journal. His conclusion was that the initial launch weight of a rocket able to get a man to the moon and back would have to be 1 million tons. Even for me, that's too big. And you fast forward to 1969, we got 3 guys to the moon and back, still with a dumb old chemical rocket. I mean, I can't blame him for not knowing about nuclear fusion because nobody else did either, you know. And it weighed 3,000 tons. He was off by a factor of 300 million. Why? Not because he was stupid. He was ignorant. He didn't know a darn thing about space travel, even though there are plenty of published papers he should have looked at. He assumed, for example, a single-stage rocket. We don't use them for deep space travel. He assumed a limit of 1g acceleration. The higher the acceleration you can stand, the less energy it takes. He assumed that the rocket would have to provide all the energy, and that when you came back, you'd have to fire a retro rocket, which you have to lift off, slow down, lift off, etc. And he didn't seem to know anything about cosmic freeloading. I like the term, so that's why I use it. I don't know if it's my innovation. And we use it in 2 ways, 2 very important ways with regard to going to the moon. We launch at the right time so that the dear old moon will come along at just the right time to pull us in. It's going to be there, and it's quite reliable in its orbit around the Earth. You know, you don't have to worry about
multi-stage rockets launching at the equator to get that 1,000-mile-an-hour boost.
You're right.
These aren't things that were computed, I guess, by the impossibilists.
Right, impossibilists I call them, but I don't know. I made up the word. I don't know what the right.
No, but I pronounce it like the perfectibilists. Have you ever heard that term?
Sounds like a cigar.
You know, it is actually what the Illuminati used to call themselves, the perfectibilists. Yeah, so I kind of give it the same accent and pronunciation. We got to go to break. We're with Stanton Friedman. This is a really interesting book, and I've learned a lot. And science and physics is kind of one of my hobbies. So I know a little bit about that going in, but it's great. Science is wrong. Stanton will come back, and we'll take your calls, 877-342-6773, 877-342-6773. Deadline Live, Rents Radio. Stay with us. Stanton Friedman with us. I'm not going to ask you, Stan, if you're related to all the other Friedmans out there.
I must be related to some of them, but, it's kind of funny. I don't know of any other Stanton Friedmans, but when I went after my files from the FBI, and I told them all about me, Social Security number, parents, date of birth, place of birth, all of us, and then I'd had a security clearance for 14 years, told them the years, and I wrote to the CIA at the same time. I hear back from the FBI. We don't have a file on you. Well, I know that they did the security investigation because people called me and say, Stan, how come the FBI is asking about you? The CIA, on the other hand, writes me saying, all we have on you is a negative name check request from the FBI, and they sent me a copy of it with a file number, no less. So I write the FBI, and I say, could you check your files again? This is what I got from the CIA. Get back a note saying, we have rechecked our files and find we do have a file on you, but it is classified. I asked, what's the size of the file and what's the level of security classification? Well, that information is classified too. Now, if my name was Tom Smith, you might say, well, they could confuse you with somebody else, it'd be easy to miss. But how many Stanton Friedmans are there born on my birthday?
Well, I mean, let's just, for the sake of argument, let's just say you are a third cousin of Milton Friedman, which will get you some credit on this show. People will like that.
Hey,
so.
There's a Nobel Prize winner, another one, he was in economics, Jerome Friedman, spelled the same way, and he was at the University of Chicago and I was there. No relative.
But not Tom Friedman, certainly not Tom Friedman, I would deny that. And Brad Friedman, you can probably go either way. He's a regular on our show as well.
There are a lot of Friedmans in New York. We're the only ones in New Brunswick.
877-342-6673. I said it wrong. I don't know the number, of course. 877-342-MORE. How about that? You guys can write it down and keep it. I got a lot I want to talk to you about with today, Stan, but let's take a few calls here and work them in.
Okay.
I've got Chris in North Carolina up first. He wants to talk to you. Chris, you're on with Stanton Friedman. Go ahead.
Hey, how you doing, Mr. Friedman?
Good.
I've been doing some extensive research on, the whole Masonic Order and the Illuminati and several other things over the past 5 years. And, through all my stumblings, I just came across the Project Bluebeam, and I'm just curious as to maybe Jack's knowledge or your knowledge of Project Bluebeam and its practical applications.
I don't know.
Thanks for the call. I'm going to let him answer that, and you can listen off air. Go ahead,
Thanks, Jack.
I don't know anything worth talking about Project Bluebeam. Maybe I should. I know about Project Blue Book.
Well, Blue Beam is where they fake UFOs in order to gain power. Of course, you remember, and there's a lot of instances, let me just finish real quick. There's a lot of instances where they plan to do that. Operation Mongoose was one in Cuba where it was similar to that, and then they also had one in the Iraqi war where Allah was going to be projected in the sky. So this all goes together, and this kind of relates back to the Ronald Reagan comment that, if UFOs were here and we could verify this presence, then the whole world could unify together, which gets us back again to the New World Order. Maybe that's where my call.
Well, he said that 5 times, where it's basically the same notion. If there was a common enemy, we and the Russians would work together and so forth. But and there have been people who try to explain any radar sighting as confabulation. That is, that where you artificially create a signal that shows up on somebody else's radar system. The only trouble is when you get to cases where there are radar and visual sightings at the same time, then, forget it. So I'm not saying we're not trying to produce Allah or anybody else, Jesus Christ, next week,
Well, in X-Files, my favorite episode was that near the end of the series, they finally caught one of the aliens, and he was wearing a suit. It was a guy from the CIA or the FBI or the NSA dressing up as aliens, and I kind of want to get into that with you, but I don't want to miss the boat on some very important issues because your chapters in your book, again, Science Was Wrong, on cold fusion, on eugenics and global warming are almost unprecedented. Some of the best stuff I've read. I do want to spend some time talking with you about that, and we're going to go to that when we go to this next break. Quickly, let me sneak in because we're commercials in 1 hour, Stan. As you know, we got to fly here. Rob Chowder, who is a great host on one of our affiliates, Oracle Broadcasting, is up, and he wants to ask you a question. Rob, thanks for calling in. You're on with Stan Friedman.
Hi, Rob.
You still have Rob? Go ahead, Rob. I'm going to take that as a no.
Did him in.
I guess the question was answered, Stan. We did well on that. Let me ask you this before we go to break. A lot of people think we didn't land on the moon. In a way, your book kind of debunks that, and I've always been a little skeptical, but you know, I'm old enough to remember the landing on the moon and how great that was, and I think sometimes I just want to believe it.
Well, the foreword to my book, Flying Saucers and Science, was written by Dr. Edgar Mitchell, the sixth man to walk on the moon. I've talked to a number of astronauts. I was part of the space program, and I'm satisfied that we landed on the moon. I really am. And I'm not saying the government has never deceived the public. I'll be the last guy to say that. You know? But as a matter of fact, we've got the seismometers up there. The recent better capability things in orbit around the moon have picked up the stuff that was left there when our guys went there. We're not operating in a vacuum. Also, the materials that came back when analyzed are different from what's here. Oh, they have the same elements. Of course they do. But that doesn't mean
let's go to break, and I want to pick up on that because you really kind of debunked the whole Van Allen belt part of that conspiracy. We're with Stanton Friedman. Stay with us, Deadline Live. Well, we have the legendary Stanton Friedman with us today. Just another day, just another show. Deadline Live, Jack Blood, Rents Radio, and affiliates. I was getting calls on Skype while I was getting calls on our toll-free number, and you can't call me on Skype. You've got to go through our official number, 877-342-6673. Stanton Friedman with us. Science Was Wrong is the book. It's well worth the price of admission. I don't agree with everything in the book, Stan, but that's not the purpose of it. I can learn something, and that's all I care about. So we were talking about landing on the moon, and one of the things you get through on your book, which is one of the major bones of contention, get away from all the why the flag doesn't look right on the moon and this kind of stuff, because I want to believe in this, but the Van Allen belt was a major bone of contention for a lot of debunkers on this, and you really get into that.
Well, remember, my business and industry was radiation shielding, and when we looking at doing stuff in space, we were worried about radiation levels in space, how they protect astronauts and stuff like that. And so the Van Allen belt, the radiation levels are high, but one needs to recognize that there are several different forms of radiation, and they differ greatly in their ability to penetrate through materials, like the outside skin of the rocket. In other words, it's a different, and the spacesuit and all this kind of thing. There are alpha particles, for example, that you can stop with a sheet of paper. There are gamma rays that are just like X-rays, except more so, and they penetrate pretty darn much. They're hard to do something about. There are a whole bunch of other particles in the Van Allen belt, particles from the sun, and these have trouble penetrating through much of anything. So the radiation levels in the Van Allen belt would be high if you were, nude swirling around in space. You'd be rather uncomfortable, I should say, incidentally. But the point is that inside a craft that's passing through the belt and not spending, let's spend the next 6 years there and what's going to happen. Airline pilots have to worry about radiation levels because at high altitude, the radiation levels are higher than they are at the surface of the Earth because the air serves as shielding. So again, it's a question of what's the dose and the dose rate inside the astronaut, so to speak, if he wears a dosimeter, and they have worn dosimeters. And so it appears that, yes, you can get higher levels when there are storms, and we're heading toward a period of, lots of storms, and sunspots are going a little crazy up there. And they send all kinds of particulate stuff toward the Earth. sometimes toward the Earth and sometimes missing the Earth. Just depends which way the Earth is, where it is.
Can bounce off the Earth a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is, it's not that you can say, oh, forget about radiation. But just as it was thought by some people, when we talked about putting man in space, hey, the meteors will kill you. You'll never be able to stay up there for any length of time. Well, there are meteors in space, and tonight anybody wants to go out and see a lot of meteorites, they'll be there. We're right at the peak of the Perseids tonight and tomorrow night.
And some people think those are UFOs.
Yeah, unfortunately, some people do. What can I say? There are a lot of IFOs and not so many UFOs.
Well, UFO only means unidentified. It doesn't
right.
confirm that it's alien presence, so to speak.
That's why when I lecture, normally my topic is something like flying saucers are real or flying saucers in science. Because all flying saucer UFOs, but very few UFOs are flying saucers. All great-grandfathers are men. But not all men are great-grandfathers, for goodness sakes. So I go along with the notion, you got to be careful what you say. Some meteors may well be flying saucers, but I don't know it to be true. What we're looking for.
Well, the more we learn, the more this stuff can be explained. And when you get into some of the projects done by the Nazis, for instance, they had Foo Fighters and these kinds of things. It begins to more and more gets explained. The more communication we have, which is another chapter in your book, Stan. The more we can, get our hands on information, I guess the more some of this stuff can be explained. Speaking of which, what is your opinion of Bill Cooper? I've always wanted to ask you that, and I'm sure you know who he is.
Milton William Cooper?
Yes, sir.
I had some direct contact with him. I met him at a MUFON conference in Las Vegas. We had some phone conversations. To put it succinctly, I think he got what he deserved. He was a liar.
Ooh.
Well, I call him like I see him. He was a liar. He can't sue me. He's dead. But he was a liar.
Well, I'm going to get some mail for that. That's okay, though. I mean,
I'm sorry.
And why do you say that he was a liar? Because it's interesting, when you read his book, Behold the Pale Horse, he gets into a lot of the UFO phenomenon, that kind of thing, and he gives, like, Navy, military intelligence. And then at one point in it, and a lot of people miss this, he says, but maybe they were just giving me this information so that I would go tell people about it, and it wasn't true.
Bill claimed to have been the briefing officer for the CINCPAC Commander-in-Chief of the Pacific Fleet. So I called the Navy Research Library, I don't know where, Washington maybe, and got a list of all the CINCPAC commanders. And I scrambled their order, and I read it to him on the phone, and I said, which was the guy that you worked for? Well, he couldn't remember which one. If you're the briefing officer for CINCPAC, you're going to remember his name, for goodness sake. Secondly, Bill had no college background. He had been a hydraulics mechanic in the Air Force before joining the Navy. What would his qualifications be? That's the best the Navy can do for a briefing officer who needs to really be on top of a lot of subjects. There are a lot of guys out of Annapolis who probably would be more qualified. He also, in his book, lies about me. He said I worked for the CIA. I will admit something.
So there's some bad blood there, Stan, between you and, well, not anymore, between you and Bill. To say he got what he deserves, though, that's pretty strong, don't you think?
He was not paying taxes. He used guns. If you've heard some of the message he's left behind.
I have, but taxes are unconstitutional at the income tax.
Well, okay, but what I'm saying is that was a fight he shouldn't have started, but let me go back and say that he said that I worked for the CIA, and Bruce Maccabee worked for the CIA. Anybody who disagreed with him, Bud Hopkins, we were all CIA guys. Now, I will make an admission here. I did once work for the United States government. In Christmas vacation 1952, I worked for the United States Post Office in Linden, New Jersey. It was good money for, a couple of weeks' work. And that's it. That's my government employment. That's not the CIA. That's the USPS. And boy, I had to wear my ROTC shoes, too. I did one heck of a lot of walking. But I mean, that's the kind of.
I mean,
thing
but you also have people criticize you. You've been involved in a number of controversies. I don't think that's talking out of school, is it, Stan? Here,
Me controversial? You're damn right.
That's good. I guess if you're not over the target, you're not getting heat. One of the allegations, I guess, is that you mix the UFO stuff with really good stuff to, I guess, be a turd in the punch bowl. I mean, I'm just saying that's what other people say. I'm not saying it.
Well, look, I am absolutely sure that people have said a lot of nasty things about me.
They say it about me, too, Stan. Stay with me. I got to bring you back for one more segment. All right, Stan Friedman with us. Be right back. My buddy John Joseph. Jack Blood with you, Deadline Live, rentsradio.com and affiliates, and Stanton Friedman is with us today. The book is, I love the book. Stan, I got to tell you, there's a couple of chapters in here that are really good, and I wanted to get into that today. I don't know how much time we're going to have to do it, and I just want people to read about global warming, cold fusion, and eugenics. You've written a great chapter on eugenics, you and your co-author, Kathleen
She did
Martin,
that one.
She did that one. But when we get into the whole UFO thing, it does kind of take away from the immediate problems we have here on planet Earth, doesn't it? I mean, here we are. I want to talk about those things, but we keep coming back to the UFO thing, I guess, for some reason.
Well, yeah, people are excited about UFOs. Hollywood is excited. They don't care about the facts. They care about the excitement, The UFO chapter was written because it's one of those things where you keep running up against stupid things said by smart people. And it's infuriating. They don't do their homework. They don't do their research. They do except by proclamation. And I can't imagine, I mean, I'm 76 years old. I have a great-grandson. The world of the future is going to involve our being part of a galactic neighborhood, like it or not. We can't avoid that because we're not
like
the
Star
ones who
Trek,
have the final
kind of,
say.
yeah.
What?
It's kind of like Star Trek, right?
Well, that same idea, and our egos have gotten in the way. And one of the best arguments being made, the most common arguments made, is, whatever we're doing is the best there can be because we're all there is. And I think we need to open our minds to a lot more than that. Stephen Hawking, just this past week.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up.
A few
Gotta
months
leave
ago,
Earth.
he said, a few months ago he said, we don't want to let aliens know we're here because we might be the natives and they're the Columbus, and we're in for trouble. Now he's saying that we got to leave Earth because we're beating the heck out of the planet, and, that's bad stuff, and so the only way we're going to survive is to get off. But can't he understand that this may have been the situation for many other civilizations a long time ago, and that's why they're all over the place? In my paper, which was given at the MUFON meeting less than a month ago in Denver, I pointed out that every civilization is going to recognize that there are threats that it has to take into account and will need another place to go. It can be a supernova. It could be the plague. It can be asteroids beating the heck. It can be overpopulation. It can be too many oil wells bursting in the ocean, all kinds of things. So everybody's going to recognize that they have to move out. They have to colonize. They have to migrate. I think there's a galactic federation, good, bad, or indifferent. But the thing is, we are young. We are innocents, maybe I shouldn't use that word.
Comparatively, we are, yeah.
Yeah, we've had radio for a little over 100 years. And I get a kick out of the SETI cultists, as I call them. Hey, I call them as I see them, who think that aliens are trying to reach us using technology appropriate for our receivers. Does that make any sense? It doesn't to me.
Well, look, I mean, if you look at radio waves, and radio waves are a viable way to, and I love this, being in radio, obviously, Stanton, the show we're doing now as it goes out on terrestrial radio will go out through the universe, and some alien somewhere might be able to hear it. But that's assuming that they've come upon that technology and used it, and that's also assuming that we had such a blink of an eye where we were using that kind of technology. Now we're at wireless, which you cover in your book, which will be a darker technology that won't communicate with the rest of so really what we're hoping, or what some people are hoping, is that the aliens out there, the extraterrestrials or extragalacticals, as I've called them in the past, are going to just find this little tiny blip in a billion years somewhere that where we announce our intentions and we talk about them. The one problem I have, though, with your book is that you seem very objective, or you and your co-author seem very objective on things like global warming and eugenics and cold fusion and space travel and some of these other things. You do a great job on that, but you seem very biased when it comes to, UFOs, and you take Carl Sagan to task, and a lot of the evidence you're giving, and you can help me with this, and is because I do believe in ancient aliens and some of that. But a lot of the evidence you give is, somebody's eyewitness report, and though we've got to at least look at that, we can't. That's not evidence.
Well, the large-scale scientific studies are evidence, and that was look, Carl and I were classmates for 3 years. I visited him before he died, etc. But he has said, for example, there are interesting sightings that aren't reliable, which is true. There are reliable sightings that aren't interesting, which is also true. But then he says, but there are no interesting and reliable sightings, and the largest study ever done for the United States Air Force shows exactly the opposite. I present the data from that report. He doesn't give any references. He doesn't have any, because what he said is a proclamation. It's not a fact derived from evidence. That's my complaint. And I'm hard-nosed about UFOs. There's no question about that. But I get sick and tired of people making claims that aren't supported by evidence. If you're going to tell me that no astronomer, there's what's his name, Phil Plait, bad astronomer guy, no astronomer sees UFOs. Well, it simply isn't true. And you look at the book by Dr. Peter Sturrock, an astronomer. You look at Alan Hynek's book, an astronomer. So I get upset by smart people saying stupid things because they're too lazy to look at the evidence. The steady people, I have. Yeah,
but you say, okay, in your global warming chapter, grants go to the people that come with the predetermined conclusions, and I have to agree with that, despite the fact that your colleagues Whitney Strieber and Art Bell wrote Day After Tomorrow. They're big global warming fanatics, I guess. And I agree with that. So why isn't that also applied to UFOlogy?
Well, who's getting the research grants? Am I saying what I'm saying because I'm going to get a research grant?
But it's not a research grant. It's a reward somehow. I mean, as you say, it's Hollywood's talking about it. It's fascinating. People want to buy the books. Do you understand where I'm going with that, Stan?
Well,
with all due respect.
I can see that. Everybody wants their 15 minutes of fame and so forth. But I'll tell you one thing. Carl got paid a lot more for a lecture than I do. Although I should put a plug in. We're hoping there will be a new movie called Magic Man, MAJIC. We just announced this the other night on Coast to Coast, and Hollywood is calling, and they've taken an option on my life and my book, Top Secret Magic, and Don Schmidt's life story, I should say, not on their lives.
I love to keep an open mind, and that's why this is all interesting to me, and I really respect you for sitting here with me and having this debate. Let's sneak in, I got a bunch of callers, but I'm only able to get in one here. Let's sneak in Chris from Boston, because I'm going to the Red Sox game on Saturday. Chris, thanks for calling in. You're on the air with Stan Friedman. Go ahead.
Hey, how you doing? Hey, Jack, one comment to you and one Mr. Friedman. Just stumbled upon your Exposing Jones expose. Great job. Disillusioned Jones listener here. Another comment to Mr. Friedman is that anyone associated with the letter agency would definitely have to attribute the high levels of barium attributed to the chemtrail phenomenon to also link it with HARP technology and the Morris couple with the development of the non-lethal weapons division of the CIA to the holographic projections of large-scale three-dimensional proportions, which is already, you can watch Richard Branson or the Virgin Records CEO beam himself holographically into a conference. So
it's
I would like your take on that. You deny, could you call it predictive programming with Hollywood and all of the UFO phenomenon?
Except that it didn't exist back 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. And when
Yes,
you have
I understand
simultaneous radar visual sightings, multiple witness, and then radar on the ground and radar in the sky, then yes, you throw out the easy explanation. It's a holographic projection, but blue beam, you said, which is a good word. I'll have to put that into my
Surprised
vocabulary.
you didn't have that one, yeah. Well, let
let
me thank my caller, Chris, because I'm almost out of time, and I'd love to just keep this going for a few hours. A quick comment, aerosol spraying? Chemtrails.
Say that again?
Chemtrails. You heard of that?
Well, yeah. As a matter of fact, I just talked to a friend of mine in California who's a big fan on chemtrails, and he says, Stan, for 3 months we haven't seen a one. The skies have been clear. They must have gone.
Isn't that the truth?
else.
Where does he live, in Texas?
Sonora, wine country, northeast of San Francisco.
Mm. Weather manipulation, they call it, what is it, the word escapes me, but the Obama administration has talked about geoengineering, and that this goes again back to global warming, and that they're going to use these things. That's kind of an excuse. They're going to use these because we know that they're there. In fact, I've got a video on my website, Stan, where you can see the tanker spraying it. We've done exhaustive research on this. I've been attacked pretty hard for doing it by the usual suspects, I got to say. Because people look up, and it's just the whole essence of your work and your book. People look up and they ask the question, why? We're told to look up and not ask why. That's not good.
Look up tonight and see the meteorites flying overhead.
I got about a minute left, Stan. Anything you want to say, put on the record. And I am recommending your book because of the couple of chapters in here that are really, really, really good. You're going to learn a lot on it. I will hope people get this because there's enough to learn. On the eugenics section alone, it's worth the price of admission.
Yeah,
I want to give you the last minute of the show and just say anything you want. Go ahead, Stan.
Okay. Well, I would say that if people want more about UFOs and about a number of other things, check out my website, www.stantonfriedman.com. And one thing, if you buy your books from me as opposed to Amazon, you get signatures from both myself and my co-author. Can't get that from Amazon.
I didn't get one of your agent didn't get me the autographs.
Well, I'm sorry.
I have everyone's book autographed, but we have to have you back again, Stan, and I hope you were entertained as much as I think my listeners were by having you on, and we got some good promo for your book and your work, man. Keep up the work. Appreciate
Thank you much.
And lay off of Bill Cooper. Give him a break, man.
All right. He's dead. Shouldn't speak unkindly of the dead.
That's right.
You're right.
Unless they're elites. Good night. Thank you so much, Stan. We'll be back tomorrow. Jim Mars, who endorsed the book we were just talking about, joining us. Stay with us and stay tuned.